Go on.
So, welcome back to another episode of the Bulletproof Dental Practice Podcast. And today we have the Fearsome Foursome back. For those that you don't know who that is, that's Dwight, Peccora, and Trey Tippit from Texas. The Texas boys are representing.
Yep.
And before we hit record, everybody was shaming me, and I'm going to out you guys for shaming me because we were talking about something about your lifestyle creep and how if you don't measure things, they'll tend to get out of control. And last time I measured my lifestyle, I was very happy with it and presume that over the next couple of years, it will just increase by 4% because that's what the CPI is. And I could live the same life every year just by spending 4% more. But what did I do instead, guys? I doubled my lifestyle, which is okay. It's not a massive problem because I'm doing okay. But we looked at a statistic before we hit record that only 4% of dentists can retire at 65. So 96% of us cannot. And I'm very lucky to have some good financial advice in my world, but look, it happened to me. I'm sure it happened to you guys as well. I won't ask you what your burn is, but if you know it, I'd love for you to tell me each how it's gone up. And by burn, we mean, what do you spend per year on everything? That's your burn rate. And another defining factor is the definition of financial independence or financial freedom is when your passive income covers your burn rate. So that means you work for fun. You have, you just, as long as you don't spend more and you earn that passively, that's financial freedom. Does anybody have a counter definition to that, or is that pretty much universally agreed?
Yeah.
I think it's appropriate to define passive income at that point in time.
Yeah.
Okay.
How do you define passive income?
What is it?
That's what I'm asking. How do you define it?
Yeah, the passive income
Very
thing
different.
is thrown around. As a matter of fact, it was thrown around this morning when anyway, physical therapist, and he was like, yeah, I'm looking for more passive income. And I was like, just kind of listening to him, and I didn't respond because I'm like, is there such a thing beyond like a CD or a treasury that's passive, meaning you do absolutely nothing? Even real estate, real estate is quote unquote what everyone thinks is passive real estate, but let me tell you, it is active. There is activity.
Well, no, it depends on what type of real estate, though. I mean, my Stewart shopping, my Stewart shopping center is absolutely freaking active.
Yeah, so those alternatives are different, and I would agree that to me, that is what I defined in my personal life. This is personal as actual passive income. Something could happen to me, and my family's still getting that money. That's true passive income to me. Yep. I'm not including. I mean, yes, most of us today are going to say, well, my passive income is I own a business. I don't have to be in the office doing dentistry and this and that. To me, if I walk away from my business, I sell out, what can my passive income continue to be? And that's how I calculate it. So mine is a very conservative pullback, in my personal opinion, from what I hear other people doing it as. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah. I mean, there's degrees to which things are passive, but I think that you can't just say that all real estate is active. Well, I have active real estate and I have passive real estate.
Well, let's not get into real estate. I was using that as an example. I think what you're trying to get to, Greg, is that there is creep regardless. There is creep in our business and there is creep in our personal life. And without regulation and auditing, it somehow spirals out of control. And so, many of us know people who they have money, spend money, right? It's like, if it's there, it's gone. There, it's gone. And I'm not talking about month to month spending. I'm just saying you feel abundant when your checking account looks big. I have this problem, actually. And I start thinking more abundantly, let's do that, let's buy this, let's do that. And in the end, I look back and I'm like, why did I do that? So intentionally, I tried to stay cash poor.
Deplete the coffers.
Correct. Right. Intentionally, I have a management company set up in my practices to make sure there is quote unquote profit first. Right. Because I unfortunately don't have the discipline to say, oh, well, let's leave that and not spend now. I have to get it out of my purview, so to speak. And that's how I do. But I think, Craig, you're right. And I think this is a big problem, and it's a big problem in dentistry because it's a heavily cash flow business. But unfortunately, like you said, what was the statistics about being able to retire on time?
4%, 65. So 96% cannot.
So 96% of dentists cannot retire by what does on time mean?
65.
65. So You're telling me that 95, I think that stat's bullshit. There's no way.
Okay. You say that's cap?
What?
I was kidding. That's what my kids say.
No, I just
had to drop that.
I'm saying
I had to drop that. That's cap.
No cap.
That's
That's
That's appropriate. I like it.
So basically that statistic, if we invert it, is only 5% of us can retire when on time.
4%, yes, but
Okay.
yes, you're right.
Only 4% of
At
us
65.
Okay.
Do you disagree with that?
I do. I think that's anemic for sure. Like, and maybe it's the people that I surround, the dentists that I know or surround myself by. But like, look,
Well, let's take the average dentist. The average dentist, we all know, does about 800 grand per year, right? Maybe 900 grand per year in his practice. He's still a solo dentist. He has no entrepreneurial profit, meaning that when he takes 2 weeks off, he's paying his team, and it's costing him.
Is this a problem
opportunity.
with? I guess where I'm going is this: is that statistic skewed? Take the same data subset of, let's call it podiatrists. Are podiatrists a 94% too, meaning it is a mechanism of owning your own business and just having your cash flow and being the only one controlling that? Or is it a mechanism of being a dentist?
I'm going to find out.
Right? Is it pervasive to just small business ownership and not having regulatory controls in that? And so I would argue
I think that's a good point.
Yeah. I don't think it's unique to dentistry.
I don't think it is either. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs say, I can always make more. I can always pivot. I can always adjust, because you are not within a system that says, well, I'm trying to get to retirement. So the statistic also says that the average dentist retires on average at 68, whereas the rest of the population that retires around 62. And so that's this kind of a bigger conversation at the mode of just like, why does it take longer?
Well, you remember Trey and I got into this back. Trey, what was that? 6 months ago, back in the student loan, like live like a student versus, and you're like, screw that, like take the money, right? Invest the money, leverage the money. And, Greg, I think that what you're saying is, if you looked at you said, when I audited my financials 5 years ago, I had doubled my lifestyle creep. And so if we had looked at this trend line from when you graduated dental school, there would be probably periods where it was like plateauing up, right? It probably was not just completely linearly happening.
Yeah.
And so that was my whole point even 6 months ago, was ensure that you know how to do it, meaning ensure that you know how to live lean when you're in the big world. Dental school doesn't count, right? Because you're sheltered there, but ensure that you have the facilities to learn how to live lean and mean. Otherwise, it's going to hurt you in your personal life. It's going to hurt you in your professional life, because you're not going to know what levers to turn off and on. That was kind of my point. And once you can do that, I think once you know that you can live lean, it can become a superpower. Meaning, let's just say hypothetically, bear with me for a second. Let's just say it takes $5,000 a month. I know that I can meet everything, make ends meet for $5,000 a month. But my cash flow, let's say, is available is 20, right? So that I know that I can invest a certain amount. I can throttle up or throttle down. But I know that because I have controls, right? And so, Craig, back to your point about the dentist not being able to retire, or the small business person not retiring, I think that we take that money and unfortunately we spend it in the consumer base, and we are not projecting that in long-term investments like real estate. I think people are putting it in the stock market. But like, do you guys know anyone who's gotten rich from the stock market?
No, of course not.
No,
I don't know anyone who's gotten independently wealthy. How did you make your money? I made it in the S&P. I know no one. And so that narrative,
you hear those random stories of people that invested 10 grand in Apple because their grandfather gave it to them and stuff like that.
But those are very random.
Those are random and rare.
So is retirement possible? I guess where it goes, in summation, is retirement possible given the narrative that we are being fed of do your S&P investment every year, max out your IRA, and everything's going to be fine?
That's a hard no.
It's a hard no. I agree, Trey.
There's no way.
And
that's
so
a
without
false
accumulation of assets, without accumulation of legit equities, without non-correlated inflationary pieces, right? Meaning it. You guys know what I'm saying? It's just a bullshit narrative.
I kind of disagree a little bit. I think that if you decided to drive the Hyundai versus the 911 and invested the difference at 28, you could have a very different future.
That's the millionaire next door methodology, right?
I think the reason why I'm bringing this up is there's that quote that says when you're giving advice, you're always trying to talk to your younger self. so I'm coming from a point where when I just did my burn, I just did my calculations. I've wanted to do it for a while. Randy knows, like, when he buys a freaking watch, he adds it to a spreadsheet. Randy knows everything to the penny. And I was just shocked to say that 5 years ago, I loved my life. I said, if I could just live this life every year, I'd be happy. I don't need to spend any more. And what did I wind up doing? I doubled it over 5 years. I've doubled it. It's fine because my business has grown, but there's some point out on this curve, this graph, where my spending eclipses my wages. And if I keep doing what I've done, if in 5 years I double it again, and another 5 years I double it again, even a guy like me who's successful can go broke. So
but only if you double it, not in tandem with your income. So everything has to be like Pete said at the beginning. You have to have this managed. You have to be the steward of your own money. So you have to start keeping the spreadsheets. You have to start knowing what's your income, what's your burn rate. The dollars you make need to be pushed into investments, for lack of a better word, just as a broad bucket of term. Let's put those dollars to work to make money elsewhere, or long-term game type money, because you need to create, going back to false narrative, the idea that you're just going to stick it in a bucket like the S&P and one day at 65 be able to finish and then drive it'll work if you want to drive the Hyundai and lower your lifestyle. But what if you live 40 years?
Let me let me frame this another way, and this will go. Do you guys believe that you can create financial independence without utilizing leverage?
Yes.
No.
I do.
I don't.
I do.
I do not. I do not either.
Well, why do you? How?
Yeah, why do you, Greg?
Paint a picture where you do.
Listen, I think the first step is controlling what you spend. So I know people that make, $3, $4, $5 million a year, and they are broke because of what they spend.
Let's go back to the dental
150.
example, though, Craig. Let's go back to the dental example. Let's keep it specific for our industry so that we can, because we can go out on I know a postman who retired and, did this. Let's keep it relative to dentistry. So let's go back to the 96%.
Right. You'd have a 7 or 8% return, in the S&P historically. Your money doubles every whatever the heck that is, 5 years, 7 years.
Rule of 72 would be 10.
Okay. So you start early and you consistently save, you will amass a large sum of money.
So,
it's just, what is your percentage of savings? What do you tell people that they should save as a percentage of their income? If it's 20% right from day one, your first paycheck onward, you're going to be financially independent, even if you use a vehicle like the S&P.
Let me make a comment to kind of take it back to the beginning for the average dentist as to why dentists, or let's say entrepreneurs, or let's say some of these doctors, that we get used to making a certain amount of income, right? The average individual of most other jobs, let's say they make $250,000 or less in a role, or $100,000, $150,000. They get used to making that kind of money. It's easier to retire with the normal societal methods of 401k, structured, minor S&P, things like that, to be able to know that when you retire, you're going to have enough return to be able to maintain the lifestyle that you established then, which is why for the masses, what is preached is correct. It does maintain that. But if you're used to making $400, $500, $600, $800, $1 million a year, and your burn is high enough to where you can't sustainably build that, then there's no way, without leveraging debt, without expanding massive equities, having access to large alternative investments, that you can maintain that lifestyle when you retire. That is, we're kind of splitting the two things, but we got to talk about the whole story. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes total sense.
So it's not to say that it's a bad system. It works for the vast majority. So now let's talk to the dentists out there and why they can't retire. The whole concept there is just simply that if you start focusing your whole life on, I can spend this much because I make this much, but the make is only made up from your business and you practicing and your disability not being a factor, or your, issues going on that are more catastrophic to your business, things like that, that's when we end up seeing this massive falter in being able to retire. It's because there's actual factors that will keep you from being able to say, if my burn gets high enough, and then I can't retire that way. And so what I would encourage, like one of the things, I'm conservative in a lot of this, and I get that and I understand that and I accept it, right? We live a great life, but like my wife and I at 40 sat down and said, if for the next 10 years, we focus on transitioning our income from our businesses and our work to alternative investments, and we focus on our burn related to that number, not immediately, because immediately the burn's going to be on over that number, right? But we know we're going to be able to practice and live our lives and build a business during this time. Now our focus is by 50, we have replaced our income that we're used to having, and now we're only going to rely our burn on that alternative income, that passive income, right? And that is what gives me more confidence to say that if something, God forbid, were to happen to me or my wife or whatever, and things like that, that we would know that our family and our kids or our spouse is going to be okay, or that we can actually retire whenever we want, with the understanding that for me, I'm going to have a hard time turning it off. You all know I'm like a driven guy. So it doesn't mean I'm going to retire from work. It means that I can be aggressive entrepreneurially, continue to pursue things I want to pursue, but I'm not worried about my family or the chance to retire at any point in time if I get hurt or something happens. That is how I define it. I know I'm kind of conservative, but like that's my life and that's how I perceive it to be. Does that, any thoughts on that?
Does your wife have an income, Dwight?
Yeah, so she works for a non-for-profit, so it's like, you know, it's $100,000, nothing crazy. She just does it now to help out non-for-profits right now. So, but it's not enough to really, it's not in our calculation. We donate as much to the charitable group than what she makes. So it's like, yeah.
I just wanted to make sure it was like, because, you know, Trey, you're probably not a dual income house, I'm guessing.
No. My wife just started a business.
Nice. There you go.
So
yeah.
so you're going to be
so it's negative.
You're the opposite of dual income.
Yeah. I thought I funded it forever, which I did, but now it's actually it's
making money. Yeah.
What
and
is
Amanda used to work, and so she did her
paper
thing,
goods.
but now it's back.
What is the business?
She does paper goods, so she does invitations, napkins? Shit like that. Denim napkins.
That's
she does invitations. She does prints, things like the shit you see on the wall in babies' rooms.
Oh, that's
invitations
awesome.
to parties, that type of thing. So
yeah,
she was a teacher and actually built this. And for the last 2 months, she's replaced her teacher income and then some.
Oh, that's awesome.
But I think that's a good point, Dwight, from the standpoint of what you're saying, and I think that's proving that you still leverage. That's using leverage to move that forward and build in the future.
Yeah.
And I think that's when you understand financial games, especially as an entrepreneur, when you start to own a business, I think that you start playing those games in your head and you understand leverage at a higher level. One of the problems, I think the numbers from...
Sorry, Trey. No, go.
Well, I was going to say one of the numbers that are one of the things that factors into the fact that you talk about dentists being unprepared at that big of a level at 65. You end up, and since we're talking about lifestyle creep and business creep and everything else, we own a business typically, but the number of financials I see on the daily pretty much of practices that we're looking to acquire, the vast majority of them have zero entrepreneurial profit, in which case it goes back to Craig, what you always say, you bought a job, you didn't buy a business, and that may be worth something in the end, but that nest egg is very small and your lifestyle creep tends to increase. Let's say you made 150 out of that business, and you may get to sell it for, $600, $700, $800, whatever you want in the future, but that doesn't really amount to anything at 65.
No,
moving forward.
It doesn't.
And you end up having every dollar spent, because lifestyle creep ends up happening all the way to the dollar, because you're still dealing with your W-2 income.
I think it's important too, is you look in the beginning of the year, and I do this every year. For a goal, I try to set an amount as a pro forma. Like, I kind of knew what I made last year. Here's probably what I'm gonna make this year. Here's my goal of investment, deployment of investment. And that can happen through multiple ways. It can be through, meaning the free dry powder available that I think will be excess has to be deployed. So I will hit a number and say, it's gonna be this. And it can either be through way of down payments from a building perspective. It could be, practice acquisition, but typically those are 0% if the P&L justifies it, or alternative investments or alternative currencies. And that's the 3 lanes that I kind of say. Those are just like deploy, get excess capital, stay true to that goal, and deploy it as quick as possible. Because otherwise I will be like, let's go to Europe. oh, let's do a safari this year. That sounds fun,
Right.
and not that
Right.
there won't be a place and time for that.
Have you been listening to my family dinners about the safari?
Right. But like that should be a goal set the same way. Deployment of capital before deployment of vacations, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm gonna blame you a little bit on this, Peter. You told me like 3 years ago. You said to me, I have you were admiring my level of vacations, and you said, hey, I want to spend blank dollars on vacations. And we talked about this for a couple months, and
Yes.
I took the advice.
Yes. You sure did.
And he told me that, and I'm like, that's double what it should be at a bare minimum. I can't even handle that.
Well, he said,
Yeah.
look, I want to beat you. Whatever it is, I would like to beat you in this. So
I beat you, buddy.
Okay.
you beat me for sure.
This is not
beat
good
it.
financial
You
advice.
beat everybody, dude. You
As
beat everybody.
Trump would say, you beat it to death.
Yeah.
But
I
you
don't
remember
get
that
it.
Like a
Medicaid
dog.
Medicaid joke in the we finally killed Medicaid. I mean, we finally beat Medicaid. That's right. Beat it to death.
So tell me, I want to know from each of you. I'm presuming you all track your burn rate. How has your burn rate as a percentage increased over the last 5 years, Pete? Do you know? Your lifestyle creep.
Oh yeah.
Has it
Five
doubled?
I'm in
years?
this. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So Pete and I have doubled in 5 years. Do you anticipate that it will double again in the next 5 years?
Absolutely not.
God, I hope not. No.
Yeah.
No, I do not.
Yeah. I just think it's like that Pearson's law. It's like when we talk about hygiene reappointment rate or net patient growth or anything else, that what you don't measure will just tend to get worse.
But Craig, I'm
And that what
really
you measure.
You're
also,
speaking by dollar figure, right? Not by percentage. Because I think this is an important comment that I'm making. Like you're saying, because in total, you might spend a little more, but this is to Trey's point, in your total income, your percentage has decreased, which I think your percentage should always be decreasing by nature of, because just because
my
you
percentage
increase
has
more.
decreased. Yeah,
Yeah,
my
as
lifestyle does
top
not
line goes up, right?
Yeah.
As top line goes up,
your percentage of burn should go down. That is health. That is
I
the
don't
right
think
call.
that happened for me. I'm not sure. I have to look at that a little bit more carefully.
If you just say total dollars, that's completely dangerous and irrelevant because it's kind of
Craig
like
views your view as a lack of creativity if the top line goes up and revenue
Because
goes
you could
down.
financially
Or
just
percentage goes
engineer this
down.
to make
Yeah.
yourself feel better. It doesn't matter what the truth is, right? This is like
Yours is
U.S.
boring.
government spending.
I'm
Craig,
just
why
saying
were
it's
you
just like
called
when we
to
talk of
do
practices.
I was
Why were
called
you
to do this because
have this conversation.
So I love conversations around money because no one understands money. No one understands it, and once you understand it, and again, as I said earlier in the podcast, I am talking to the 30-year-old version of me. I wish someone had sat down with me and said, "Hey, you work for money, and then money's got to work for you." And I think the reason why there's this mass exodus towards sale to a DSO is because people don't understand money. They were never able to build passive money generating vehicles. So they're forced to have to sell in order to generate the money. I believe you could run a business, which means that it makes money either when you're there, excessive to what you produce, or it makes money without you. And then it's your obligation to take that money and invest it. And hopefully your business continues to provide cash forever and it doesn't burn you out, and your passive income just kind of slowly slips in. So it's like you're almost like derailing one car and jumping onto another.
Using it as the vehicle for a creative yield on your overtime, I assume.
And then additionally, build a practice that you love, that works for you. And I think a lot of people are hooked on the narrative of 7 to 10 to 15 practices, and they get there and then they absolutely hate their life because it's super complex. Build the minimum size practice that provides you with the income that can cover your burn and invest 20%. And if you love it, stop.
I don't know that it's a love. I don't know that it's I have to correct this just entrepreneurially. Like, I don't think it's a love. I think a lot of dentists like to be like, don't book me after 3. Don't book me. You got to build a business that makes money, or don't be a business owner. Like, I agree with that too. I'm a big fan of that. Just because you love it, you're like chill lifestyle, and then you like to continue to do lifestyle creep. But I think my mindset on this that I need to stay is we constantly interact with dentists who do not even know. You ask them about their financials, they're like, yeah, I mean, I get paid, so we're in the black. Like, that's the extent of their financial knowledge on their business. And we're talking about that they've taken that and actually analyzed their personal lives. Like, I know my wife was a past COO. So yeah, so we think about business. So we've taken that down. So I know that not everybody has, like what he said, like tool incomes where they think this way, but we have sat down and said, like, it should not only be decreasing now, but it should be replaced by something else. The more important thing is are you doing this in your business? And thus, are you then doing it at home? Do you actually know your numbers at home? Because I think that's the problem that most doctors in particular who run their own business, that's my number one issue, is they don't know their numbers and they don't know them for their personal life.
Well, can we double click on something you said? Because this is actually what I was going to recommend the pod being about, was this culture of, so you guys know about the CEO of Starbucks being ousted recently,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I think the All In talked about this,
Yes.
and I thought that was a very good
Yeah.
thing. And so he was basically saying, hey, look, I'm running this multinational company, but you better not contact me after 6 p.m. or else it better be important.
Right.
And that was like the downfall of his thing. And they were saying, God, it's so
Awful.
cringy, right? But Dwight, you just said something like that. Like, I don't want to see patients here. I don't want patients having my phone number. If I call, I don't want to do post-op calls because what if they call me? And
be an associate.
And so it's this. And so what they were saying on the All In pod was like, that's a top-down mentality. So if the CEO is saying, look, I'm off grid after 6 p.m., then, the next in command is like, I'm off grid 5, 4, 3, right? So it's a trickle down, and it becomes this culture of, feeling good and going to dinner and having friends and having community and all these things, and is way more important than the performance culture that used to be. And so, when I was listening to that on All In, I was thinking to myself, like, how, like, generationally, so I'm a generation, I guess I haven't said it in so long.
You're
I'm
X.
Generation X, right? And I really feel, and I'm not saying like it's the walk to snow in the both ways uphill kind of thing versus what we've talked about as Gen Z, but it definitely was more of a performance culture, I would say, right? Where we didn't have
outcomes matter, not
Right.
equity, equality, not equality or equity. It was actually a meritocracy.
And so I was thinking to myself, like, this that a culture that we should all strive for is the one opposite of Narasham, who was the CEO who was ousted, and more of the guy from they hired this guy from Chipotle. They stole the guy from Chipotle, and the guy from Chipotle basically came in as a
is his name.
Yeah, that's right. And why was he so good? I'm always available. I'm in the weeds. I'm literally figuring out operationally efficiencies, where there's fat, where to cut, where to do whatever. And the stock actually went up 25% just from that hire, right? Because everyone knew. And so I know I'm taking this on a tangent of thing, but Dwight, you brought this from where it started, at least from where this pod started. I'm taking it on a tangent of kind of this performance culture. But like, you are responsible for injecting that into your culture.
Absolutely.
Would you agree?
Yes.
Like, Dwight, even just the call that you led our mastermind on just an hour ago, right, was talking about like accountability and like you being involved in these meetings and you showing people your worksheets and spreadsheets and how you kind of derive all these outcomes, right? And Craig, as we always say, like, your inputs are going to equal your outputs. It's not by chance. It's not because, oh, I got lucky. Look what happened. I got to retire on time because I got lucky. No, you have to retire on time because you ate glass for the first 5 years. Things got a little better, and then you were disciplined with your alternate investments, kind of thing.
And I think it's exactly what you said. It's two types of burnout. First burnout is, I'm going to make this happen. I'm a doctor. I deserve this. I deserve that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that dentistry is hard. And I think being a single practitioner where you're doing both, running the business and working on your business and working in your business, is hard. And so by nature, I believe that people who are exhausted actually spend more, because they're like, I deserve this because I'm so tired. I'm so exhausted from having to run these practices and I do all the parts.
Yeah, I
And
deserve
so
a vacation.
I
deserve
it.
a new car.
I deserve a Ferrari.
Porsche, a Ferrari.
I'm a doctor. I'm all these things, as opposed to being like, how does this fit into my ability to retire? And it's like, do you know what I do all day? Do you know how many hygienists have walked out on me? Do you know how many of my patients never paid their bill? Do you know how many of this? And it becomes this self-reflection thing where it's like, why? Like what?
It's
why?
You're saying, Dwight, it's the counterbalance for that, and this
It's
is where
the emotional financial draw, and that is never healthy when you live in that. I get it. You should buy yourself something nice, but make it incomparable to the budget that you should be able to appropriately manage at that time. Because if not, it's just an emotional decision. You know why?
Yeah, that's grown up entitlement.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
You know, one thing I said, you corrected me, Dwight, about like loving your practice or whatever. I actually hated my practice when it had no entrepreneurial profit. So, you know, they say money doesn't buy happiness. It's bullshit. Money does buy happiness. You know, middle income people are happier generally than low income people, and high income people are happier. It levels out. But there is a correlation to, you know, money and happiness. And if you don't have your practice being a business, it feels very vulnerable. If you're skiing and you break your wrist, if something happens, you're holding the bag. It's a very precarious position. It's exposed. And financial independence is just the ability to say, like, even if the hurricane comes or I break my wrist or whatever, I'm okay. And I think everybody needs to grow up and actually get to that point. I want that for everybody. You make better decisions. You're a better leader. You're a more clear thinker when you're not under the gun financially.
And to add to that, which is kind of my big, the one that I think is like the worst financial trait in general is the concept of FOMO. I think FOMO is like recklessness disguised as like ambition.
FOMO meaning,
but like the fear of missing out on whatever, like, you know, Craig being like, I got to compete with Pete. Y'all are fine. Y'all are friends. It's a difference. But people living in their social media and saying like, you have it, therefore I should have it. I am a doctor too. You should be able to, and they are not putting in the work to build a business, but they're seeing you with your new Porsche or in Turks and Caicos or whatever. And they're like, well, if he has it, I'm also
Turks
a
and
dentist.
Caicos?
I should also have it. So that's the idea, right? Like to wrap your head around that is where I get it. So I think FOMO is just like recklessness.
I don't even post stuff like that. You know why, Dwight? Because you know what I got tired of? It must be nice. The must be nice comments. I'm like,
I don't post it all anymore, guys. You don't see
nice
any.
Comments.
I've noticed that. I've noticed that like everybody, in particular on this call, like we've gotten off of social. And it's
I still post, but I just won't post like a flex. I hate that. Although maybe
it's
the
not
cows
about
could
the
be a
flex
flex
either. I don't believe in social media now because I think it does naturally affect me to like stare at it. It's good for business, but for me to be on there and be like, oh, they got to do that. Now I've got it in my head. Should I, whatever. And it does. It's like reckless behavior financially for like, and it's masked as ambition. Like, oh, I can do that. And the truth is get on a call, get on a podcast, talk about what my business does.
Masked as ambition is a really good way to put that because that's exactly what it is. Yeah. You're competing with people that you have. It's a one-sided competition, and all you're chasing is an outcome without the inputs that put in.
Or is it just
Dwight,
seeking?
Do you think it's fair to say that you don't post on social media because you're just sick of us harassing you for these types of pictures?
Yes, because I never posted that. So yes,
did get 1,000 likes, by the way.
But he posed for it.
I would never know how many I got.
For those that are listening,
right there, like no, not what you were thinking posting that. I mean, literally, what were you thinking?
Oh, that's good.
What were you thinking? What was going
I have
through
another
your brain?
Meeting probably in 30 minutes. It's on my schedule that I need to get
when
out
is
of
this photo shoot done?
Yeah, exactly.
Or why did I have to bring 7 outfit changes for one photo shoot?
So Trey, to your point though, you know, I think it's seeking significance, right? So it's if you can do that, then I can too. So Dwight, it's not a FOMO thing. I think it's a fear of like comparison kind of thing. And
it's thinking how many people.
But it is missing out, right? It's somebody else is doing something that I'm not getting to do.
That's true.
It's the
I
same
think there's
thing.
a tie-in with that, too. There's a keeping up factor of it. There's a seeking significance, and part of that is if you don't achieve those, then you have a fear of missing out.
So let's go back to this. Let's wrap this thing in a bubble or a present or a bubble. But like, let's act like we were talking to ourselves at circa, 30 years old. Each one of us are work back in time. And like, is there advice? It's hard to kind of look in the rearview mirror and give advice and say, oh, in hindsight, 2020, right? But like, is there something you wish you would have been told or taught or learned or implemented differently so that the people listening to this can either course correct with that new data, or the people, or if they haven't embarked on this journey, they can be set out with a set of tools that has wisdom, right? Wisdom from life experience. So from 4 people talking about their life experience in the subset of dentistry. Trey.
Boil it all down to one basic thing. I mean, easy button this. Understand financials, because what that will lead to is understanding an income statement, watching a P&L, and realizing there is entrepreneurial profit at the bottom. And in order to do that, to achieve that, now you have to do all these things in your business to get there. And that will build you that financial freedom longer term faster. But that was
understand, you're boiling it down to understand your financials.
correct.
Right.
I'm trying to go all the way down to granular easy button.
What would you say Dwight, I'm going to go to you in a second. What would you say, Trey, just as an estimation, our industry has, from a literary standpoint of that point, what am I trying to say? What would you say there is the financial literacy of that, what you just said, in our industry? That's what I was trying to say.
What percentage of people in an industry are financially literate enough to understand that?
Yeah.
What Trey just said.
I would say you are not. You are easily less than half of that have true.
So you're saying 50% of dentistry is diligent about reading their financial statements, understanding their balance sheets. At most.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I never meet people that know this stuff. I never know people that know entrepreneurial profit. Never.
It's the same number of people that can retire early.
Of the group I'm hanging out with. So, you realize that you hope it's better, but you've surrounded yourself with people that are that.
I would agree with Dwight, what Dwight just said, and we didn't hear it. Dwight, say it again.
What did I say? I said like 4 things.
You said I would think it would be about the same people who can retire on time.
Correct. Yeah. That's exactly it. Because you said it was 95 to 5%. So 5% can probably figure out a balance sheet and understand how to build their trajectory to financial independence.
And how to take actions from that, right? Not just, I understand. Sucks for me. It's not a very good output. Sucks for me, but like
going in the wrong direction.
They actually, exactly, Trey. They actually know how to course correct and be like, all right, so this is the output. This is the KPI that I'm getting. How do I reverse engineer? What are the things I need to do to reverse engineer that to be a better KPI? Not just the whole thing of being like, well, yeah, my rent's 4%, or my rent's 12%, or my supplies are 8%. Like, what are the actions that you can do to correct it? Yeah. That's a big part.
Yeah.
Right? So I think literacy is one thing. I think financial actions are another.
I totally agree. And surrounding yourself with people who would hold you accountable to that, which is part of my answer, really. Like the earlier, so I got out at 26, right? And so by the time I was 40, like if I had knowing what I know now, I would have said, double down harder, leverage harder in my 30s.
Who kept you accountable, Dwight?
I mean, I've had a coach, I think, since I was like a business coach or somebody like that. Like I worked with Alex Sharfin starting, I think I was 28. People like that were really, they started testing my thought process.
Trey,
to where I wasn't just in my own head.
Who kept you accountable, Trey?
I did the exact same. Always had a business coach.
Okay. Craig, your friends? Just your friends?
Just friends.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think my dad actually played a large part of it. He had his MBA and we would talk about this stuff a lot. So I agree. I think there's a common theme here. Don't let money be the thing we can't talk about, right?
Yeah, for sure. And my family can't talk about it.
Right?
We don't talk about it. I brought it with my brother-in-law. It was like bringing up like the most horrific subject ever.
And if you can't talk about it in your group of friends, potentially you need to find yourself, not another group of friends, but like you keep those friends. I'm not saying bail on them all, but like get yourself in an environment. Dwight, like you said, you were talking about the accountability sheet for the next class of mastermind, like, and you had a working Google Drive, like
Right.
that is where the magic happens, right?
Yeah.
You keep accountability. And that's why I even say, even to distill it down in, like, I know I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here, but I say, make your patients accountable by having a human ask them, hey, are you going to make this appointment? Hey, would you mind leaving a review? It's accountability at a micro scale, works at the macro as well.
But you have to understand, everybody runs from accountability. That's why the percentages are correct on who can retire, in my opinion. Because even at the end of a mastermind, you've got masterminders who like, I have so much stuff, I need a year off to go implement with no accountability. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm gonna go do, is I'm gonna take a year off and have nobody hold me accountable to implement all this stuff. I'm like, well, you didn't get it implemented this year. You got some of it done, but as we go, and financial independence is no different. Like, you've got to stand with those people. But the idea of FOMO is there's always somebody making money faster than you. First of all, there always will be, but more importantly, like at this moment, you may end up wealthier than that person, but at this moment, somebody will be making more money than you are, spending it in a different way. So you can't get stuck in that FOMO mindset.
Do you think the greats like Steve Jobs had an account? I'm just kind of thinking, like, I wonder if Elon has to have an accountability thing, or is like, or do you just graduate past that after your first billion? I don't know, but like, does greatness happen because you're accountable, or you know what I'm saying?
I think there was always the greats are the ones who have people around them that are of their same mindset and continue to graduate out of the groups that have been holding you behind. And I think those are the greats, the ones who, I mean, Elon Musk filed bankruptcy how many times, right? Like, the point was, he was a driven guy, but it wasn't until he found the people that he found to be able to do what was necessary to make that happen. His goal was always to surround himself with people who could implement his ideas to make that happen. He's kind of an extreme guy, but like, that's totally the idea.
Probably not. That's the outlier example.
Yeah,
that's
right.
Probably not. Yeah.
But even he himself has said, like, I spend most of my time collaborating. My mindset is he doesn't like to own a house because he likes to lay on somebody's couch collaborating on a concept that he's stuck on and can't get off of. So even he understands that that's part of his lifestyle and his reach, his pursuit.
Did you see, speaking of Elon, did you see how he is trying to become the DOGE position for the government?
No.
You didn't. It's a tweet. He wants to become the head of the Department of Governmental Efficiency. And what is that acronym?
Yeah, firing.
Doge.
Dogecoin.
Yeah, but he's also, look, he could fire,
what is it, we get into crypto somehow. This is good.
No. Hey, well, you know what? It is coiling up right now, Dwight. Bitcoin is coiling. And, if interest rates...
It's been coiling for 10 years.
Oh, shut up, Craig.
I'm kidding.
This is not part of the financial pod.
No, this is not. But actually what it is, so this could actually be part of the financial pod, because so much of what we do is predicated on interest rates. And if we're going to bring this into current events, what is on the table right now?
A potential cut.
Politics?
A potential cut, right?
Yeah.
It's the September meeting, they're talking about a 50 basis points or a 0.5%.
Not a potential. It's going to happen.
Okay.
They're going to do it.
So what is that going to, so right. So Dwight, so we talk about this. And if other people's capital is your leverage, right? If capital becomes cheaper, right? Is that the time to act? But now there's a correlation. Interest rates go down, asset prices go up, right? The real estates and practices and all these things go up. So, but it is an injection of free flowing cash. So this is, Trey, I think going to your point about understanding balance sheets and your P&L and how to get there, but it's also understanding how to make macro moves, I think, right? Understanding cost of capital, and if I do this, and how's this investment, and how much of my portfolio is not correlated to inflation or pandemics or whatever.
But now you have to understand, cost of capital is key, and it has transformed the way the economy works now. Even for DSOs, what are they doing? They're building de novos now, and they're not acquiring practices because the cost of capital is too high for us to go in there and manage that and transform a whole practice and spend that much. When as those rates come down, they're only going to build more. Is
that what they're doing, Dwight, or is just one group we spoke of is doing? I mean, are you hearing this more and more?
Yes, absolutely.
Is de novos?
Every group I will say this openly. Every group that has knocked on my door in the last 4 months is only interested in platform development of de novos. They want to take a model that they believe is working in the environment and in that group and expand that at scale at a de novo level, because they know that they can spend $500,000 in build out or less. They can build $500,000 in the first year of paying people, regardless of the cash flow of the practice. And within 1 year, you've got $350,000 to $500,000 in EBITDA. It's an easy calculation. You move on. And that's all they're going to do because
Leasing,
it's worth
so
it.
you're saying like leasing retail space, plopping in
Correct.
a $400,000 build out and rolling, right?
Rolling. And having cash flow to keep it going, to pay everybody and keep it going. And then by the end of the year, you've got
I wonder if that's
$500,000 in EBITDA, right? That's pretty common throughout, right? It's going to be higher. It's going to be around 1.5 in the Northeast total, but it's going to be about $1 million spent in Texas or southern states.
Dude, to have a $500,000 in EBITDA in how short of time?
That's bullshit flag. I'm throwing the bullshit flag. Nobody's that good. There are some that are that good.
No
but
chance,
most
Dwight.
claim to be that good, and then you look at their financials.
I'm not calling mine. I'm not calling ours. I'm calling that DSOs. Literally, that is their only model of expectation. It is pretty easy to calculate.
What was the time frame, bud?
Anywhere from a year to 18 months.
There's no chance. No chance. Look, if they're doing that, then like I surrender, because us mortal men cannot do that.
They're spending
to get to $500,000 in EBITDA in 12 to 18 months.
I said 325 was the number I was given to $500,000 in 12 to 18 months.
So like run well, and Craig, this is looping into now if you know your entrepreneurial profit, right? So then essentially that is your EBITDA, let's just call it, right? Without some owner benefits put back in, or with some. Do you think I just think that, so that would put the revenues in the first 12 months, Dwight, eclipsing with cost of labor. I mean, eclipsing $2 million.
What I'm calling out is models that they predicted. They've predictably done.
Okay, 350. Then you're right.
Call it $1.5 million.
Yeah, 175. Yeah, $2 million.
But how much better is that of a model than going and buying an $800,000 practice?
Yep.
I don't know, man.
It's $1 million.
It depends, and I hate that answer. Right? Because like not all acquisitions are treated equally, as we all know.
But cost of capital, a more predictable option versus a less predictable. It's just cost of capital is going to push that to be that concept. Before when it's
zero. Do you think that's so lowering interest rates? Do you think that becomes an accelerant to what you just spoke of?
I think in general, it makes it, I think that's the model they're going for because it's a no contest game. But yes, I mean, making cost of capital cheaper, obviously is going to make it available for both sides of it to go up. But the goal is that's the model that they're staring at, because you acquire a practice, the stance that there's a chance that somebody's going to fall off of that practice or a team going to turn over and all these things, and you're wasting time and money. And you're buying equipment and they've hidden all these things. And now you got to take care of all these personalities and emotions. Like that's what they're doing. I'm just saying, like, that's very predictable modeling for them.
Yeah, the concept of that makes perfect sense. The evolution of moving towards that exclusively, I agree with.
Yeah.
You know, I thought I heard that it was a startup, but it was also like focusing on standalone retail components was a thing. Maybe that was my own. Maybe I didn't hear that.
That's one unique one, and you did hear that.
I did.
I know that one too. Yeah.
Just from a visibility thing. And I know we are all big fans of like just massive visibility wherever you can go, right? Yeah. Even if it's the most expensive option, because that's something you pay for once, but get to yield forever and ever.
Yep.
Versus the mistake I made in 2005 was, I'm going to buy this condo in an office park. You know why? Because it was cheap.
Which one was that?
Shit, that was the Roswell location.
Okay, yeah.
I don't have that building anymore. I sold that. But I mean, yeah, it was cheap, but boy, was it expensive advertising.
Yeah, for
yeah.
Sure.
I mean, like, look, one of the easy back of the napkin math tricks I would do is if you had a building and it had frontage and you were able to put a sign up on it, I would check what the billboard closest to me rents for per month and add that into my mortgage payment. So if it was $5,000 a month to have that billboard, I would add that I could spend $5,000 more a month on my mortgage payment, because it's better to own it. You're paying down your sign, essentially. You're owning the same landscape as your real estate.
Speaking of signage, by the way, I got a quote, Dwight, and I know you made like a billboard jumbotron on your practice. I got a basic ass lit sign, internally lit sign. I think it's a 4x8.
So not a digital sign, just
not digital,
lit.
just okay. What would you guess it would be? Trey, what would you guess that quote came back from as? So
how big of a sign?
4x8, but it had some brick going down one side and a foundation.
So just a monument sign, like
just a monument sign with that had light that lit up.
That's backlit.
Yeah.
Probably 10 grand.
Yep, you are wrong by a factor of 3.
Yeah. I was going to 35 to 40 grand.
30 do it in China.
Yeah, I did actually.
Well, you should feel good about yourself. I could have that same sign bid out. They charge me $300, and I'd be like, yeah, okay.
So you had just been like, well, that's what it is, right? But I just couldn't. Like my poor 25-year-old self would have kicked my ass, and so he's like, do not do it. Go on Alibaba. Go on Alibaba.
So, but what'd you get it for?
So I actually got it for delivered, landed, and it's superior looking product. Now it hasn't been fabricated yet. I just got the sign that's going to go up.
Yeah,
Jesus.
But $2,800.
Let me know when you get it.
I'm wrong by a factor.
I have a picture
in the other direction.
So I did that for the sign I talk about, and then I got excited about the new building I'm building, and I was like, hey, can you quote this 14-foot sign? He was like, yeah, there you go. And it was unbelievable. So I got 6 signs made for $11,000 versus the one for $30,000.
Who installs it?
My contractor will install the one in the buildings, right? I have to find a contractor locally, a mason, right? Someone who does stonework. Yeah. But it's all been engineered. I actually got on Upwork and had plans, like construction plans made based on the specs from the sign company. So like I have the blueprints now for $90. I have the sign. I just need to find a mason. And like Greg's smiling because he's like, dude, what is wrong with you? Because you would not take that brain damage. I know you wouldn't.
I wouldn't.
Well, listen, I think we're coming to an inflection point in this pod, and I just want to kind of
Thank you.
I want to just kind of summarize what the points have been agreed upon.
Yeah.
Number one point that was agreed upon early on was if you own a practice, you have a responsibility to turn it into a self-sustaining business. If you choose to work in it, that's fine, but it should produce some degree of entrepreneurial profit, meaning that you are actually beyond what you get paid as an associate in the practice or providing labor. It should provide something. The next thing I think is what you're talking about with this sign is its 3 currencies: emotion, time, and money. And I think most of the people that are listening to this podcast are they're hustlers. They want to grow. They're entrepreneurs. They're looking for the next level. And I want to caution those people because I think it's good to make more money, and I'm a big capitalist, but at a certain point you start chasing this thing and it disrupts your life. And I know a lot of people that are chasing money and not enjoying their lives as much. So I think lifestyle creep and all these things being said, you should go out and buy the thing and have fun. It's just you have to just figure out a way to lock up a certain percentage of everything that you make into some sort of passive income vehicle, whether it's S&P or real estate or whatever the hell you want. But I think there's just a certain prerequisite amount that all of us need to save. I tell my kids it's 20%. I ask everybody. People usually say it's between 15 and 30%. It's not that much. And so if you could start, if you're 28 or 32 years old, and you could start saving 20%. I know it doesn't seem like very much. It's 2,000, it's 5,000, it's 10,000, whatever it is. It'll add up. It's incredible how it works in hindsight. What did I do? I went out my first year. I made $80,000. I bought an $80,000 Mercedes. That was not a good idea. Had I taken that same money, if I would have just bought the Hyundai or whatever, I know I was single at the time, but had I just been a little bit more financially disciplined, I would have arrived a lot earlier at a place that I'm at now, which is financial freedom. And I think that was the spirit of the podcast that I wanted to just communicate. Is it doesn't seem like much, but done with discipline over time, you'll get to a point where you can actually generate financial freedom for yourself.
So either you're saying, so that is the advice that I asked Trey. You answered the question. We'll go back to Dwight, but basically, Craig, you're saying that whether it's a fixed amount or a percentage, to establish it and stay consistent to it, and don't deviate regardless of your lifestyle. Or your creep or your business, right? Just stay. It's like, I'm going to be committed to this come hell or high water. And if you do that and you find ways to create leverage and you find alternative investments and you find real estate opportunities and you find S&P and you diversify your portfolio, but you're consistently doing it year after year, you're going to be fine. Is that what you're saying?
You will be fine. And you have to get there. You have to do this, and I think that a lot of people, like you said, lifestyle creep, you said practice creep. A lot of people are just serial entrepreneurs, and what are they doing? They're building more and more and more practices, and that's cool too. But I would backstop that with passive investments. Owning a practice is never going to be passive.
You and I had that conversation today offline, right? And you were like, dude, it's like, you're continually building,
I said you're swinging for the fences, Pete.
Always, and I can't stop. It's my drug.
Look at what happens when we start off. We have to turn 30 cents into $1.50. You need leverage. You borrow $1, you have to turn it to 10. At a certain point, when you have millions of dollars of net worth, you have to turn $1 into $1.10 because it's just gonna grow, and you're gonna get to that number. Like, we should all have a number in our head when we should be done. I really believe that. I think
Scott Galloway.
Yeah, Scott Galloway says, he had 100 million was his number, and he says he reached it, almost a decade ago. And beyond that, he's going to spend every penny or give it away. And
I think it's important to have a number from that standpoint, mainly because of the mantra of pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. You have to be careful that chasing more for the sake of more can be a dangerous game to play. But if you're
Trey,
chasing
you hit that number, have you hit your number?
No,
I won't ask you what it is. I'm just asking.
No, I have not hit my number. I have not hit my number, but I love what I do. I enjoy it. I'm financially responsible with what I do, and I will keep doing it until, one, I'm not proud of it, I don't love it, or I feel like my financial responsibility is violated.
Meaning that it's not responsible
I'm
for
making risky bets that I shouldn't be, that are risking, say, my family's financial future, so to speak.
What would be an example of that, Trey, in your mind? Just so I'm making sure I don't violate this.
Yeah, he's talking over leveraging.
Okay.
Over leveraging, and I'm worried more about over leveraging of time of both me and my team, mostly my team, than I am financially over leveraging, because that's what's going to cause the failure. Is taking too many. For example, if I buy too many project practices at the same time, that's a problem.
Yep, exactly right.
Yes. God, yeah. Well, yeah, and the fact that that, right, that you have that awareness because maybe you have the scar that reminds you of that, right, is key, because so many people will get into this space. They're like, hey, Dennis, like, I have people hit me up on Twitter, like, let's just go roll up a bunch of practices. I'm like, that sounds fun and all, but do you know each one of them is a snowflake pain in the ass, probably? Like, right, there's a reason they're for sale, potentially. And there is a whole smorgasbord of personalities and culture and operations and practice management software. This isn't, let's go find a bunch of widgets in the wood and put them in a bucket. It's so different. So the fact that you have that optics, Trey, I think is your wisdom gave you that. Now, Dwight, what would you say in closing? What would you say, Greg? We heard your kind of advice, and I think that's great advice to your younger self. What do you wish you could go back and maybe even tell young Dwight, or what advice would you give to people listening?
I think it just comes down to the fact of making sure I'm an accommodator of people. My natural tendency is to want to accommodate socially the people around me, and I want more for them than they want for themselves. And so one of my things that slowed me down in my late 20s and my 30s was that I didn't go at the pace I was capable of. I wasn't leveraging as much because I was accommodating partnerships, or I was accommodating others. I was letting that get in the way of what I needed personally. Right.
You
So
had to ask permission kind of thing.
yeah. And in some ways it was more about the fact that I personally have that social connection with people that I feel like, need to be liked, feeling the desire to, all those things. A lot of that's gone now in many, many ways, because I've surrounded myself with people who do not expect of me of that. And they're amping me up and they're leveraging me, pushing me up to do more and not holding me back. And I think that's something that's very common is entrepreneurs they'll get this from family. This is not my case. I didn't get it from a lot of family. I'm surrounded by entrepreneurs. So there's always a push there. But like a lot of my friends, a lot of the people I work with, a lot of the doctors we bring on, a lot of people are looking at associates to bring on as partners, realizing they're going to anchor the hell out of this business, right?
Yeah.
And on the growth. And so these are the things that hold us back. And for me, those were chains and weights that I've had to break off over time.
So you would have acted more unbridled
and sought out more counsel on how quickly I could do things and leverage myself harder.
But you said you had a good mentor, right? Or maybe
I did. But part of that mentorship included me blowing and going and pushing, but I was always kind of still carrying these weights. So it was more about shedding some of the individuals, that were around me. Right. I mean, I remember going to dental school and people in college were like, you're going to go to school for how many years? I'm getting out and making money right away. Right. And it was this concept of like you don't want to invest in the long term. And then you get out and you get into practice and people are like, why are you trying to do implants, man? That's just you're going to get sued for that stuff. You're going to do this. And then why are you building a building in the middle of COVID? Like it was every time there was somebody I had to break through. And so, I needed people like y'all and I needed other people in my life to help push me through. But that was the reality is I had to give myself the grace to say, no, they're out of my way. I'm moving forward more often. And I have some of that today, right? So we have to realize our team that I have now isn't always going to grow at the pace I'm growing. And are they going to keep up? And I need to accept that those people may not be the people that get me to the next place.
And I think too, Dwight, you did that. And I think then you took swings and you're like, shit, I just hit the ball in the outfield. And you're like, I'm going to do that again. Right. And I think action begets more action. And
agreed.
And you start getting more of a swag. Like you have a definite swagger to you now as a dental entrepreneur that you did not have when I first met you. Right.
Yeah. I mean, totally agree.
I'm not disparaging you. I'm saying like you are definitely, you speak with a different level of confidence. Even on like a mastermind call, you're like, shit, this building was a leap of faith. I acted as if it wasn't, but I was fucking petrified inside the one building you built. Right.
Yeah.
And so like you have grown tremendously by taking swings and surrounding yourself by people who kind of supported those swings. I think.
Correct.
And I think that's a big thing is put yourself in that petri dish of support.
Agreed.
Well, I would add to that. I think looking back to say what you would tell your younger self is an interesting game to play, but you have to step into the arena and you have to step up to the plate and take the swing to learn the lessons that you needed to learn to go back and tell yourself those things. So one of the best things you can do is just learn from every step you make. And what Dwight, you just mentioned is to move forward, take the swing, keep going and learn from it. And if you fuck up, undo it, back up, go the other direction, but do it as fast as possible. But you got to learn from every move you make. Then you can give yourself, that younger self, that advice. But you had to do it to get there.
I agree. Yeah. There's only so much that mentorship is going to teach you. You do
Experience
have to swing.
Is a great teacher, basically.
Yeah. I mean,
when are you done, Dwight? I'm just curious. When are you done? When it's not fun anymore?
I don't think that I'll ever just turn it off. But for me,
are you worried about building it so big it's not fun?
No.
Okay. I am.
Trey, you
hold on. But you have to understand, like for me, Trey wants to build it too big to where it's not fun because he's still managing it all himself. To me, I won't run into that problem. I'm willing to bring on support and partnerships and development in that way to where I'm not going to carry.
Are you the acting CEO?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Craig, his next hire as he's still big is, here you go. You're the new CEO kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
It's
I don't
one
mind
more
doing
level of extrication.
that. I don't mind doing that at all. I don't have to be in that
You're
role. I don't
chairman
have
of
the
your
ego.
board. You're chairman of
Correct.
your board at that point. Yeah.
I can
Are
sit
you
there my
taking
whole
on new
life.
partners too, Dwight? Is there new partners coming on?
I'm always taking on partners.
When's the last part? So how many partners in the whole FBD?
Right now, there's 5, including me.
Okay. And when was the last one added?
Less than a year ago, 6 months ago.
And Trey, no partners still for you?
2.
Okay. And Pete, are you going to be taking on new partners, you think? Is there one in the wings that's kind of expressing interest or not at the moment?
Yeah, there's interest, right? But there's been no conversations of that. Not for my unwillingness. It's just no, I'm not. But I've had, but as you know, I've had 7 partnership liquidity events.
You mean 7 onboardings?
Right. Well,
Yep.
yeah. I've sold equity 7 times.
Yeah.
So I don't feel like I'm always, I think to Dwight's point, you're always on. You're not off. You're always open to someone being it. But I feel like I've kind of like checked that box, and I'm moving forward with my plan from a partnership was to make sure we had a diversification from a location standpoint, but then had ownership in all those locations, so that I didn't feel like I was spinning 7 plates and being like, oh shit, I can't sleep, I can't eat, I'm too nervous, it's all going to fall, because I'm 100% owner. And so it was a divide and conquer, right? Not that we're getting in partnership stuff.
I was just curious.
Okay. Well, good.
That's a good one, fellas.
That's the pod.
I would love to ask the audience, if you're on YouTube and you can comment, if you listen to the whole thing and added any value, just drop a little comment. I'd love to hear that. I'd love to hear that. I just want to make sure that what we're thinking is landing. And if there's any other podcasts that you'd love to hear in the future, please suggest that as well. We'd love that.
Like from a content perspective?
Yeah, just because I think that, we're just assuming what people want to hear. And I'm just assuming what I would have loved to hear when I was younger. And we got a younger audience. Just no one told me this crap. No one.
I agree.
But thanks for listening.
Yeah. Summit registration is launching, fellas, August 23rd, I believe. That is the date when the registration site goes live. Somehow, believe it or not, someone found the secret link. You guys are not going to believe this, and registered a team of 25 people.
25 people registered for an unlisted
It wasn't
summit.
published yet. So somehow you had to go to like ... for, I don't know how they found it. Maybe it was Google.
Maybe they searched like lorem ipsum. Bulletproof.
Yeah,
that index.
Lorem ipsum. So anyway, so it's launching officially. If you're on our mailing list, you will get notification, probably a text and whatnot. Again, it's Orlando,
August 8th and 9th, or
Ritz-Carlton, August 8th and 9th in 2025. Yeah. Darren Shaw, the pod that you will probably have heard, hasn't come out yet, but Craig and I did a pod with an SEO guy, and Craig had him convinced to come, and he unfortunately can't. But it's all good. Dwight will be there, and he's an SEO master.
Wait till you hear this pod, guys. Like Peter, texted me the notes of if you watch the pod, you'll see Peter scribbling notes down. It's crazy. Like this pod with Darren Shaw. It's like, I'd like to not look. Can I not launch it in my geo?
We almost thought
South Florida.
How do we put this in 48 states, not Georgia and Florida?
Yeah. We'll lock it from Texas just so you guys can benefit as well.
Yeah, that's right.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really good. It was really good. So, all right, guys. Sweet. Good to be with y'all, and we're out.
Hold on.
See you guys.
Potatoes.